Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about monsters, and in particular we're going to talk about the zombie from the Monster Manual. And oh my gosh, one of the most fun parts for me is doing these monster tactic videos and talking about monsters, because I love monsters, I've always have, and the fact that I get to talk about them and sort of demonstrate how they might be used in your game, and also give you the opportunity to tell me how you use them in your game, is always quite fun for me. So I would have to say that honestly the best zombies that you can have in your game are always going to be zombies that the characters have known while they were alive, and they have been brought back to life as the undead or as a zombie. That is probably the only zombie I can think of that has the kind of gritty feel to it, that had that emotional connection that you really want, because tactically a zombie is pretty dull. It's not very complicated at all. But if you turn to page 315 and 316, there's information on the zombie, and there's also included is the stat block. And we're going to talk about the stat block as well as some of the tactics you might use in your game for the zombie. And I'm also going to use my screen that I usually use for demonstrating how I would use them on a grid and with a map, as I always do. So let's talk about some of the basics for the zombie. It's a mindless undead creature that's driven to kill the living. And I have to say that AJ Pickett does a fine job of describing how zombies operate and distinguishing the zombie for Dungeons and Dragons from the modern concept of the zombie. The modern concept of the zombie is infected with a disease, and it spreads its disease, and it's really sort of trying to highlight some of the just how our culture has evolved. That is part of its process, the modern zombie. But the D&D or Dungeons and Dragons zombie is simply a creature driven to kill the living, and not to eat them. They're not spreading a disease, they're not spreading an infection or anything like that. What they're trying to do is simply dispose of anything that is currently living, and they would squash bugs. And I recommend checking out AJ Pickett's video on the zombie. So this corpse is given semblance of life by necromantic magic. Now, I know a lot of people get caught up into, well, hang on, necromancy is evil, and then other people say, no, necromancy is not evil. But the way that this particular magic is used is evil in its conception. So creating something that is undead, that doesn't have any real tie to its original life. It's not like raising the dead. Raise the dead is you bringing back the soul of the original, whoever occupied the vessel originally. But with a zombie, it's just giving it some life, but it's not like there's a connection. It's not like it has a soul. It's not the same. So zombies are evil, and they can come by from a spell or just dark magic that might have saturated a location. There's lots of different reasons. The most common one is going to be zombies coming back because somebody's cast Animate Dead and brought them back in that way. And of course that means there'll be a controller of some kind, somebody who has something to gain by controlling them. A zombie has absolutely no thoughts and really retains no aspect of its former life. A zombie has no soul, as I've already said. This means that what are you going to do with something that really doesn't have anything connecting it to its previous life? How do you play that out on your grid or in your game for Dungeons and Dragons? Because essentially it's simply animated by magic, and that's part of the problem. That's all it is animated by magic. And it might have a dark and sinister creature that resides within it for that duration, but that's no guarantee that's in fact what's going on. So they have no purpose, as I said, other than to attack and kill the living. And so a common encounter with a zombie will usually start with zombies just standing around or just waiting around for the living to approach. which is something you've seen in the movies already. You know, it's quite common to just see zombies standing around in groups or on their own, and when somebody approaches, then of course they are driven to kill. Zombies understand a language that it might have known in life, which is quite weird, because if there's no sort of connection to its previous life, then why would it understand a language that it knew when it was alive, but it can't speak anyway, so it doesn't matter. It honestly won't matter very much, particularly if they are driven to kill the living. The only time I can see it making any sense where you might have a role-play encounter with a zombie, which is going to be pretty much one way, is if you're dealing with a character in the party who has, for some other reason or some weird reason, wound up being an undead creature themselves, because a zombie is not going to bother attacking an undead creature. It will only go after the living. And yes, I don't think a conversation with a zombie would get you very far anyway, even if it could speak, because what has it got to share with you? I don't think there's very much to be passed on from a zombie at all. Okay, so let us bring up the grid, and I will just sort of give you a basic idea of how I would use them, and then you will have a chance to ask your questions and give your feedback. So, because zombies don't really worry about tactics, they don't have any kind of comprehension of obstacles or hazards. So if there were caltrops, pools of acid, or a fast-moving river, or any sort of obstacle, they're not even going to probably bother going around it. They're probably going to just go straight through. So if there's something in the way, then they'll probably just try to clamber over it or walk straight through it. Okay, so very, very simple tactics. From A to B, the shortest route is what they're after. A zombie takes the most direct route, as I said. They also use very basic tactics, and there's nothing complicated about the zombie. There really isn't. All it has is a slam attack. That's really all it can do. And because it has no free will or no personality, it's really only going to be driven by the compulsion to kill the living or to follow orders that have been given by its controller, and whoever's controlling them needs to be very specific. Otherwise, what's going to tend to happen is it'll follow those orders indefinitely and to the letter. So you have to be very careful about the instructions you give to a zombie. Otherwise, it's going to go and do some strange things and probably just repeat the same action over and over again. So this is what I tend to do with my zombies. Whether I'm using one zombie or two zombies, it doesn't really matter. Let's say we've just got one zombie. One zombie isn't really going to be much of a problem for a party who are higher than level 1. Okay, one zombie is not really a big deal. And that's not because they are tactically dangerous, it's just because of the number of hit points they have and that Undead Fortitude that they also have. At level 1 though, a single zombie, even two zombies, is going to be very, very dangerous. And the reason being is because low level characters can't dish out enough damage to really put them down. Once they get to 0, close to dying, and they're using their Undead Fortitude, because of the way that Undead Fortitude has been set up, low level characters usually don't pump out an awful lot of damage. And so the chances are when they make their Constitution saving throw, and the DC is based on 5 plus the damage taken, so the DC is not going to be very high, which means the chances are with the high Constitution modifier that a zombie has, when they make their Constitution saving throw, which is going to be a +3 to whatever you roll on your 20-sided dice, the chances are they're going to do reasonably well. On average, they might get a 10. I've rolled a 5. Okay, so a 5 plus 3, that's 8. That means that the damage that they need to do, the players at level 1 need to be doing at least 3 points. 3 points of damage. Or they need to be using something that's going to cause radiant damage, or they need to score a critical hit. It's asking an awful lot to do a critical hit. Radiant damage is a little bit different. That's what Sacred Miss is for. Sacred Flame. Sacred Flame is for. Very good for zombies, but it is anything else, it does feel like more like a Sacred Miss. But Sacred Flame is very good for putting them down, and that's the one tool that the clerics have that will help them deal with zombies, particularly if they haven't picked up their turn undead yet, and if they're really low level. So this is what I tend to do. They go straight for the first target in the front. That's it. Bam. Straight line, whoever's in the front. They're not going to spread themselves out. They're just going to go for whatever is currently closest to them and alive. So if you have more than one zombie in your little escapade here, in your little encounter, they're all probably going to wail on whoever's standing in the front. And if that's the fighter or the barbarian, so be it. Now, if you have more zombies, so you have a truckload more, then yes, by all means, start surrounding your player. Okay, start getting them in there so that they can get more hits. That's a very common thing to have happen. Go straight line. Whoever's in front, they're not necessarily going to worry about using things like dodging, disengaging, even moving out of combat. They're not going to be concerned about whether they die or live. They're already dead. It's an undead creature. Okay, so what else is going to be used in your encounter? The only thing that I think I would consider using is the grapple or the grab. So making a grab or a grapple action with a zombie, and only if they can't surround their target and keep them in place. If they're trying to move away, if the players are trying to move away, then honestly, what's going to tend to happen is if they try to move away, then the zombie's going to follow them. But they would be smart enough, although they're not very bright at all, they'd be smart enough to realize that they could grab the target and hold it in place so that they can continue to attack. And that's probably what they would do, but only if the player's character is trying to move away. Okay, so we've covered that part of it, using the grapple and the slam. The other thing is zombies do not flee. They will fight until they are destroyed unless instructed by their controller. If their controller has instructions that they are to stay in the fight, that would be a little bit different. I'm going to get onto Undead Fortitude in a second, but there's another factor that makes zombies very frustrating, particularly if you are a dungeon master and you're having to contend with using them. I'm just going to pull these all out of combat, and I'm just going to demonstrate the problem here. Let's pull all of our players back just a fraction, just a little bit further, so they're a little bit further away, and our zombies are hopefully in the screen. I'll keep them in the screen as best I can. Okay. So we've got our group of zombies. Their speed is only 20 feet. A speed of 20 feet, and most of the players will have a speed of 30 feet or faster. And on top of that, even the slower characters, if you're lucky, they might be using like 25 as their speed, and that's it. And they're not going to be as slow as a zombie. So what can tend to happen with a zombie battle, particularly if they're seen from a distance, is the players will move backward and shoot them until they take them down. Now they can only move their speed, which is 30 feet, so eventually the zombies will catch up. But you can wind up with a situation where you're constantly, particularly if there's a decent gap. I haven't provided you with a huge gap between this battle, but if there's more than like 20 or 40 feet, there's going to be a lot of moving back and shooting rather than moving up. Just so that they can whittle them down. A smart party will tend to do that. So even if the zombie goes 5, 10, 15, 20, it's going to have to dash to get into combat, which is exactly what it would do. It would use the dash action to get up close. But the rest of the party, particularly if they have the opportunity to take their turn first, are going to just keep moving back and shooting. And that can be a very boring battle. So it's important that you use things like the cover of darkness, or you put them in locations that make them not quite so obvious as being undead, having their back to them so that they can't see everything that's going on. So it's not obvious, they walk into the room and they can see this grey, fleshy, rotting creature. It's an undead zombie. Okay, we know what it is. We know roughly how fast it moves. They move really slow. We'll just keep moving back and shooting. So that's why I said originally that the best zombies are the ones that the players have met before, that they have some sort of emotional tie to, because then you can play them. They're going to feel really guilty when they dispose of that zombie, particularly if it's, say, a zombie child, a zombie woman, or a individual that they have known in life. And that is how I would play your zombies out. Okay, let's get on to Undead Fortitude. So one of the problems with Undead Fortitude is it's not completely clear how it's supposed to work. It's the only part of the zombie that makes the zombie interesting, other than the fact that it's undead and it's got a bit of flavour. But then mechanically, the zombie is totally boring. It's got a very low armor class. The chances of hitting it, most people, as long as they don't roll a 1, are probably going to strike this thing even at low level. Because what? You've got a level 1 character's probably going to have a hit modifier of +5. So that means they only need to roll a 3. And then once they go up in level a couple of times, then really they'll be needing to roll maybe 2s. And as long as they don't roll a 1, they hit the target. A lot of my players are always shocked at how low they can roll on the dice and still be successful. So Undead Fortitude, I'm going to read it out and then I'm going to break it down because I've had a few people ask me this question and it's actually cropped up in my game as well. Okay, so Undead Fortitude. If damage reduces the zombie to 0 hit points, it must make a Constitution saving throw. So the Constitution saving throw is your 20-sided dice, and you add the Constitution modifier, which is +3, okay? Because it doesn't actually spell out that it has a Constitution saving throw. It doesn't tell you what it is, so you just use the Constitution modifier. And the DC is determined by 5 plus the damage taken. So whatever the damage the players do to the zombie, you add that to 5, and that is the DC that the saving throw for the zombie has to make. Unless the damage is radiant. Okay, so if you do radiant damage, then you don't worry about making the Constitution saving throw, or if it's a critical hit. You roll a 20, or if you've got the champion fighter and you've got the improved critical, then you can roll a 19. On a success, the zombie drops to 1 hit point instead. So here's the thing that used to confuse a lot of people, and I'm going to demonstrate it with just one zombie. We're going to get rid of that one. Bring in this fella. Okay, strike it, it goes down. You make the saving throw. Now, does that mean when you strike it down and it goes to 0, does it fall prone? Well, there's actually nothing in the description for Undead Fortitude that talks about the zombie falling prone when it goes to 0 hit points. All of this takes place before anything like that can happen. Okay, so if it gets reduced to 0 hit points, you make the Constitution saving throw. If it's successful, it's on 1 hit point and it can continue in the fight. Otherwise, if it's unsuccessful, it's destroyed and it falls over. You don't drop it prone until you've determined what's going to happen with Undead Fortitude. I know this has cropped up in my games and a couple of other people's games, and that is that they're always worried about, okay, so it's dropped to 0 hit points, okay, it falls over. And then they'll make the Constitution saving throw. They'll be successful, and then they want to make it stand back up. And then there's a battle of wills between the Dungeon Master and the players about using up their speed, half their speed to get up because it's prone. The fact that they should have advantage on attacks and melee because, that seems sensible and fair, particularly if they had readied actions and they're up close in battle, so maybe you had more than one character and they had readied an action. All of that comes into play. This is how I'm going to explain it to you, and I think I explained it to one of the subscribers who asked the question, and that is, don't have the zombie drop prone until you have determined whether the thing is dead or not, whether it's on 1 hit point or 0 hit points. Or decide that thematically and flavor wise, yes, I really want it to look like it's about to fall over or it falls over and gets back up. And all of that can be done in the same round. I'm always a sort of person in Dungeon Master who recommends that you modify the monsters in the monster manual and you run them as you see fit. And honestly, it doesn't matter. It really shouldn't matter because all of this is taking place on the zombie's turn. So it shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. The only time that it comes up as an issue is when the zombies move 20 feet, it gets struck down after it's made its attack, and okay, all right, it's moved up, it's made its attack, somebody else has a turn, it gets knocked over, you make the Constitution saving throw, but you've already put it prone, but you want to stand it back up. Okay, oh well, there's a problem, but it's already used its movement, and that's sort of not part of it's not a reaction, you know. So don't get into that. Don't even put it down prone. It stays up until you're finished using your Constitution saving throw. Okay, use the Undead Fortitude. That's pretty much it. I don't have anything else much to say about the zombie. I still highly recommend making sure that the players know that the characters that used to be alive and now have become zombies, or you use the heartstrings, you use the child, the woman, somebody who they would have trouble or feel guilty about disposing of in some way. Okay, that's it. So I don't have anything else to say about the zombie. Hopefully this was helpful or informative in some way. And if it was, please share and like the video. If you like this sort of content, then subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I have about 500 videos and I do one video pretty much every single day. Also hit the bell button, that'll notify you when I'm live, and also when I publish a new video. That can be very helpful. On top of that, if you want to support my channel, well, hey, you just supported my channel right now in doing this sort of content by watching this video. And if you watch more of my videos, that'll help support me too. On top of that, I don't do Patreon, but down in the description, hey, you know the story, I do those affiliate link things. You know, you click onto the affiliate link, buy something online, I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price as you normally would online, and you don't even have to buy the thing that it's linked to. You can buy whatever you like. I usually use Amazon Book Depository, and if there are other places you buy stuff from, you just let me know and I can become a pro affiliate marketer for them as well. If you have questions in the chat while you're here in the live stream, please start asking those questions before I leave. Otherwise, if you weren't able to be part of the live stream, the comment section, this is where you need to ask your questions, give your feedback, disagree with me, confirm what I've said. Yeah, all those sorts of things are going to be useful. Remember that there aren't a lot of videos or information on monster tactics for Dungeons and Dragons, and so what we're doing here is building up a reference for other people who can use this later on, and it's always helpful to get feedback from somebody about this sort of thing. And that is pretty much it, and that is what I'm going to say. Till next time, keep rolling those 20s, and probably you can roll a 3 on your 20-sided dice and you're still going to hit that zombie.